He's unlocked powers of airbending that haven't existed for thousands of years.
There haven't been this many airbenders in one place for a long time either. We have power together.
Hola, comrades. Today's topic of interest, airbending. Of the many accomplishments of Avatar: The Last Airbender and its sequel series, The Legend of Korra, one of their greatest is the refusal to completely glorify or vilify any of the four nations in them. Initially, the Air Nation is presented positively and the Fire Nation negatively, as the only information revealed about these nations is that the Fire Nation committed genocide on the Air Nation. However, just as the ordinary people of the Fire Nation are revealed to be mostly decent people, taken advantage of by a government they hardly have any connection with, the Air Nation is revealed to have been deeply flawed. They tried to sever Aang's ties with his mentor, Monk Gyatso, causing Aang to flee before being caught in a storm that resulted in him being trapped in an iceberg for 100 years. The philosophy of airbending is the philosophy of detachment. As Uncle Iroh explains to Zuko, air is the element of freedom, but that does not mean it's inherently good. The perspective of both series on the philosophy of airbending is decidedly mixed. Some aspects of it are viewed positively, such as its pacifism, while others are viewed negatively, such as its disdain for earthly connection. Co-creators Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino borrow heavily from the East, not only for the designs of the shows and their martial arts, but also for the philosophy of the shows. This is where the focus on balance comes from, and from that idea of balance comes the idea that much which is considered to be separate actually isn't. There is light even in darkness, such as in the case of the villains in Korra, and there is darkness even in light, such as in the case of Katara, a thoroughly moral person who nonetheless has a ruthless side, as showcased in the Southern Raiders. However, Konietzko and DiMartino are considerably more troubled by the importance placed on absolute detachment in many strains of Eastern philosophy, most notably Buddhism, on which Air Nation philosophy is heavily based. In episode 219, The Guru, Aang trains with Guru Patik, who says he can teach Aang how to master the Avatar state. He teaches Aang how to unlock his chakras. Most of the lessons he teaches are moral and quite profound. For example, when he teaches Aang to unlock his Fire Chakra, he persuades him to release his shame over burning Katara. Aang does not learn that firebending is about life and energy, not destruction and anger, until the firebending masters, but this episode nonetheless marks a significant step forward in his willingness to master firebending. However, the final chakra, the thought chakra, presents a challenge. As Guru Patik says, it deals with pure cosmic energy and is blocked by earthly attachments. Aang deeply loves Katara, and he refuses to choose cosmic energy over her. Because of this, he not only fails to master the Avatar state, but is completely blocked from entering it. While this causes him strife, his decision is not implied by the show to be completely wrong. Iroh, who is consistently portrayed as the wisest character in Avatar and a fantastic mentor to Zuko, admires his decision.
Perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love.
Even when Aang does let go of Katara to reach the Avatar state, his decision is not triumphant, but rather tragic. He apologizes to Katara. The tragedy is compounded by how it did not bring him victory over Azula. If The Guru is a critique of total detachment from a personal standpoint, Yang Chen's advice to Aang is a critique of it from a practical standpoint. As a fellow airbender, Yang Chen understands Aang's predicament, but she argues that because Aang's duty is inherently to the world, he cannot detach himself from it. Detachment brings enlightenment, yes, she says, but there are more important things than enlightenment when the fate of the world is at stake. Despite how Aang interprets the advice Yang Chen and the other avatars give him, they are not saying he has to kill the Fire Lord necessarily. They are merely stopping him from hiding behind illusions and excuses and imploring him to serve the world and to be decisive, which he ultimately does without betraying the principles he holds dear. Whereas benders of other nations may have killed the Fire Lord, Aang manages to depower him without killing him. Aang says he likes to solve his problems by being quick or clever, and that is exactly what he manages to do in the finale. The airbending philosophy of non-aggression succeeds. Avatar and Korra do not argue that this philosophy is unsalvageable. They believe there's much to be admired about it. But both shows are hesitant about that seventh chakra, that idea of complete detachment from the world. Over the course of both shows, only one character manages to achieve complete detachment, and it is the villain of Season 3 of Korra, the anarchist Zahir. While he does not follow the non-aggression part of airbending philosophy, he resolutely follows the detachment part. Long before he got airbending via harmonic convergence, Zahir had admired airbending philosophy. It fits nicely with his political beliefs. If enlightenment can only be found through complete detachment from the world, then a natural political argument for an extremist like Zahir would state that institutions ought to be torn down, for they inherently restrict freedom and prevent enlightenment. Any systems that create hierarchies are by their nature repressive and ought to be torn down. This includes killing the Avatar, who by the nature of the position has vastly more power than everyone else. That Zahir, this fervent admirer of airbending, believes he is destined to succeed after he awakes with airbending is a sensible conclusion, even though it is not a strictly logical one. Whereas airbenders like Tenzin and Aang and Yang Chen are conflicted about detachment, Zahir is not, and he benefits from that spiritually, though not morally. In episode 312, Enter the Void, Zahir loses the one person he truly loved, Pali, and thus attains complete freedom. When Su Yin and Lin corner him, he repeats to himself a poem by Guru Lahima. Let go your earthly tether, enter the void, empty and become wind. Then he dives off a cliff and starts to fly. Despite the moral costs of complete detachment, it is indeed extremely powerful. However, it is not undefeatable. Korra defeats Zahir, but not without the help of the New Air Nation. Under Janora's lead, the New Air Nation forms a tornado and sucks Zahir into it. These are two competing visions of what airbending means. Both are completely legitimate interpretations of classical airbending philosophy. However, by having the New Air Nation triumph over Zahir, the show is declaring that a vision committed to peace is morally superior to a vision committed to complete detachment. This is underlined in the ceremony where Janora is unveiled as an airbending master. Tenzin makes a speech where he outlines his vision for a moral approach to airbending philosophy. While the New Air Nation, like the Old Air Nation, travels the world, it is, unlike the Old Air Nation, not isolationist. It is committed to helping people of all nations achieve peace and balance. This is the complete antithesis to detachment, but it is still a completely legitimate interpretation of airbending philosophy. As Aang points out to Guru Patik, there is inherent contradiction in the idea of the chakras. The fourth chakra deals with love. Aang, hearing this, focuses on his love for Katara, and is thus even more dismayed than he would have otherwise been when Patik commands him to let Katara go. There is nothing inherently wrong with contradictions like this, but they force one to choose. Is detachment higher in importance than worldly love? Classical airbending teaching seems to indicate the answer to that question could very well be yes, but Aang and Yang Chen are unwilling to uncritically accept that. Fittingly, there is also a contradiction in the larger philosophy of airbending. If the central two tenets of airbending are, number 1, detachment, and number 2, non-aggression, what is to be done when both cannot be followed? Avatar and Korra argue that they are not completely compatible. The vision both shows have of non-aggression extends to ensuring peace and prosperity. When the New Air Nation triumphs over Zahir, It is not merely a statement against extremism and in favor of the power of institutions, but also a statement that detachment is not as important as leading the world toward peace. Detachment may allow enlightenment, but what is enlightenment worth without morality? What is enlightenment worth if it does not prevent one from threatening to kill the new Air Nation? The Legend of Korra argues that the power of flight is worth less than the powers of solidarity, and compassion, and empathy. Firebending is first viewed as destruction and rage in Avatar, before being revealed to be far more than that. It's about life and energy. Avatar depicts conventional wisdom about firebending to be completely wrong. For airbending, however, the show and its successor take a different approach. They introduce it as a philosophy with two sides. The first, a commitment to peace, that both shows unequivocally endorse, and the second, a commitment to detachment that the shows are more skeptical of. By the end of Korra, these two sides cannot be reconciled, so one must be chosen, and through having the new Air Nation triumph over Zahir, the show chooses peace. While The Legend of Korra does more to elucidate the war between these two components of airbending, both shows take the same perspective toward airbending, and that perspective is this: the most moral parts of the philosophy should be embraced, while the more questionable parts should be viewed more skeptically.
Why would I choose cosmic energy over Katara? How could it be a bad thing that I feel an attachment to her?
There are heroes and villains in every nation in Avatar, unlike Harry Potter, which tries heartily to shake the perception that Gryffindor is the good house and Slytherin the evil house, but is unable to completely free itself from this idea because evil Gryffindors are rare, and most of the villains are heavily associated with Slytherin House. Throughout Avatar and Korra, evil and good take all shapes. It is not insignificant that the 5 main members of the original Team Avatar are an Earthbender, an Airbender, a Waterbender, a Firebender, and a Non-Bender. While Avatar's villains are mostly Firebenders, Korra's villains even that out because they belong to the other 3 nations, and the ideologies of these villains roughly match what Iroh associates their nations with. Water is the element of change, he said, and Amon tried to consume the world in revolution. Earth is the element of substance, he said, and both the Earth Queen and Kuvira have claims to lording over regimes of substance. The Earth Queen because she controls a kingdom that's lasted for centuries, and Kuvira because she transforms the collapsed Earth Kingdom into a cohesive, hyper-modern Earth Empire in a relatively short amount of time. And finally, air is considered the element of freedom, and Zahir idealizes the idea of freedom to an extreme. This balanced view of its nations also leads to skepticism toward their philosophies, and I love the approach it takes with airbending. Avatar and Korra are consistently about finding a third option that others considered impossible. The most famous examples of this are Aang defeating the Fire Lord without killing him, and Korra rejecting Unalaq's fundamentalism, but agreeing that the spirit and human worlds shouldn't be separate, but smaller examples fill both series. And the show's perspective toward airbending is one of the best of those more subtle examples. The philosophy of airbending should not be wholly rejected because of its ideas of detachment, for there is much of value in that philosophy, but that does not mean those ideas of detachment should not be accepted without criticism. Ultimately, both shows decide ideas of all 4 nations are needed to make a bustling and emotionally vibrant world. No nation's ideas are completely right, which is why maintaining balance is critical. Taking ideas from only one place leads to imbalance and extremism. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more airy content. Also, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. All that ethereal stuff. Adios, comrades.